Hello, it's good to be back again this week. I didn't have much chance to announce what I was going to talk about uh, in advance of this session, but I wanted to carry on the theme of learning with Duolingo and the Swahili challenge. It felt like it made sense to do that. So, what I want to do is just sort of talk about how I feel it's been going and give you an update on what it's been like working with Duolingo and also some of the things that I've learned on the way going through this process. It's been just over a week, which is why I'm sort of calling a call this a week-ish of Duolingo. It's been, well, I started a week ago on Friday, so it's about 10 days of this challenge, and I've had 3 lessons of Swahili on italki with my teacher Glory. So I've done my third lesson was today. The first 2 lessons, I've been doing lessons twice a week. So it's Wednesdays and Sundays for my lessons. And I'll carry on for an entire month. So I'll do a month of Swahili. I've recorded the 3 lessons. The third lesson I'm going to upload today. Possibly after this live, I will look to finish getting it edited and uploaded. I just need to top and tail the actual footage. I don't really go on to heavy editing with the lessons. I think that it's better for you to see the sort of the entirety of what I do. Clearly, when we're sort of setting things up, it's not that interesting. So, and also, if there's something sort of at the end, just it makes sense to just tidy it up a little bit. But I do like the idea of you seeing the full lesson, and also anyone in the future as well who is interested in learning Swahili and following the classes that I've been taking. Of course, that's going to be there available free of charge for you to go. And then if you want to carry on with your Swahili, then you'll be able to do that. And you know what I'm doing, you know how I'm doing it, you know the kind of vocabulary that I'm learning. And then when I get to the end, I'll give you an appraisal of how I feel it's been going or how I feel it's gone. And yeah, for now, I just want to sort of talk a little bit about this week and how I felt 10 days of Duolingo has been. So, as some of you know, I'm not a huge gamification person. So, I'm not really big into you've got a streak of how many days, or you've got, how many gems you have, or what kind of clothes you wear in the game. And definitely see these options for like changing the shop and changing different things and buying gems and buying hearts and things. And I get what they're for. I'm just not that interested in it myself. One thing I will say about Duolingo is there's something quite nice about the community aspect of, you have friends, like there are people I know who use Duolingo, and they will congratulate me for doing certain things, and I get these notifications when I go in. So such and such a person congratulated you for getting to this level, for doing this many days, and it feels a little bit more personal when it's like that, instead of just sort of a green owl telling me that I'm good or bad. And so there's something quite nice about that. The other thing that I can understand as being interesting in Duolingo is that sort of they have these leagues. So if anybody likes, sports or anything, like, where you have leagues where you move up and down, you're actually put up into the next league, next division each time. So at the moment, I am in what they call the Ruby league, and I am in the top 10 of the people who will go up to the next league, the next division today. In fact, at the end of today, by tomorrow. It's quite strange, but I have actually found that to be quite fun. Just because it's sort of, you see other people, how much they're doing, and it kind of does make you a little bit want to do a bit more, because you see other people are doing it and you think, okay, well, I'll do it. But on the flip side, I think because this has been a challenge for me, and I've been very motivated to get through lessons, so that when I get to my lesson with Glory, I have a very specific target in mind. So I want to get through certain things to see Glory, and be able to communicate more and build on what I've been doing, because I want each lesson to be building on the next. And so from that point of view, I've actually found it to be quite motivational for me. And if I weren't doing this though, I would actually probably find it annoying. And I've got to say, I've used the app before, never even noticed it. So it shows you how much attention I've paid to the leagues. I can imagine that if you don't have many hours in your day and you're just getting demoted constantly, that negative interaction with the application would be, as I've seen it before, deeply frustrating. So like the crying owl and I just find it a bit manipulative and not very helpful. So I'm more of a positive, looking forward in a positive way type person when it comes to language learning. Well, pretty much most things actually. But I would much prefer the Speakly approach to this. Whereas in Speakly, if you miss a day, or if you find something difficult and you don't get it straight away, they just say, "Oh, you're going to get it next time." There's like a really positive message that you get in Speakly when I was doing Estonian, and I found that actually way more encouraging for my language learning than I do in Duolingo. Because Duolingo is times that you get these big red X's, you get these type noises, which I find deeply frustrating. And then in between, you get dances and things, which a bit weird, but they're okay. So I've absolutely, I would absolutely recommend sort of, yeah, taking all of that with a pinch of salt. I would find that having the sort of all of this sort of negative feedback for me personally, I would find actually usually quite discouraging, and I wouldn't advocate the use of that kind of method of yeah, feedback. I think for people, I think it's much better to sort of acknowledge that there's a mistake, but also not maybe throw it in your face so much. I mean, not that I mean, okay, look, it depends on every individual's different, right? But I think that if you constantly see big red X's and sort of loud noises to say it's wrong, and it can be a bit annoying over time. But generally speaking, the Swahili course, compared to other things I see, like the memes of the owl looks at the purple cow on the street or something silly, for other courses that I've seen, I've not come across that with Swahili yet. So the sentences have made sense. The thrust of the course itself so far, I've been through greetings, I've been through introductions, I've been through talking about nationality, talking about making simple sentences with verbs in the sort of positive and negative. So that's been quite good. It's handy that I've had the lessons with Glory at the same time, just because she's explained the grammar and I've seen the grammar with it, and so it's made more sense, and I've pieced things together because I've been doing a combination of two things. I saw somebody had commented on one of the videos that they felt that the lessons were grammar heavy. I don't personally feel that myself. I think that there is always horses for courses when it comes to learning a language. So some of you will prefer to have a real explanation of what's going on and why it's working that way, and playing with things and doing exercises and manipulating grammar for other verbs or other nouns that help you to see patterns. And some of you won't. Some of you will hate that. And it's fine either way. There's no right or wrong with this. At the moment, I'm talking to a lot of people about specific language study and language goals. I'm doing these interviews, and it's been really, really useful, because you see that there's a real difference in people and approaches, and there isn't just one way to do things. It's not like there's a book that you buy and that's it. That's solved all of your issues or all of your questions about language learning. just don't think that's true. Which is why I think that you see many, many different people approaching language learning in different ways with their own different words and techniques. That, you know, some of them are kind of calqued, some of them will be, you know, a sort of a version or an iteration of tried and tested methods of yesteryear, and others will be quite simply things that look or are sold as new and innovative. My personal feeling is that many of the things that we do now are innovations of tried and tested methods, and I think that's fine, because things need to be repackaged for new audiences and for different people. So when it comes to a language lesson, for example, with a teacher, for me with Glory, for example, we do look at patterns of how present tenses are formed, how negation is done today. We did negation in the present tense, and the past tense, and the future tense, and the preterite. So we did all of these things, right? And I found it fun. I found it quite challenging. We also looked at numbers. We looked at days of the week and months of the year, which I hadn't done until now, and they haven't come up actually on Duolingo, which I think is pretty good. It's one of those things that people tend to do in the very beginning, and I'm conscious that numbers, when to actually get them right and to use them in a fluent manner, takes a lot of time. It's something that you need to practice quite regularly and hear quite a lot. So I'm not a huge fan of doing all of that in the very first lesson. I think that there are possibly more useful things that we can do with our time. And the thing with Duolingo, with Swahili, is it's been definitely focused on introductions, greetings, and now making basic sentences. The sentences and the word choices are not bad. They're not amazing, but they're not bad. So, you know, for example, for the basic present tense, they're talking about things like the verbs to like, to run, to walk, to go, to come. Basically some basic verbs that you would need to know. I like to, and then we've been doing the negative as well. So I don't like, I don't run, I don't whatever, and then doing it through the different personal pronouns, and that's been good. So I've done the present tense that way on Duolingo. Glory kind of took that a bit further with me in the lessons and went through some small changes that you need to make it tensed, to put it into the future or into the past. So possibly I won't see that until a lot later on Duolingo, but I've enjoyed doing that with Glory. The other thing that I've started doing on Duo is the so some professions that I haven't been doing with Glory, and sometimes they're related to other words that I know. Mhandisi is the word for an engineer, and I know that muhandis is Arabic and Turkish as well, so I know those words, and that's helped. But there are other words that are just completely different. Mwalimu is the word for a teacher, for example, and I had no idea what that was. And then I've also learned, other words that have come up throughout. The only thing I would say is, because it's a course and a global approach, right, to language learning, this is sort of one thing that when people sell courses and when people sell you a product to learn a language, they're selling it to the widest audience possible. So they have to make it as attractive to the widest audience possible. And so there are certain things that you can and can't do in that situation. So for me, right now in Swahili, following Duolingo, for example, I still can't say that I am where I'm from, because the only countries that have been mentioned have been Kenya, Tanzania, China, the United States, and the Netherlands, strangely enough. And I don't think I've seen any other country mentioned. So at the moment, I don't have I've seen the word with Glory, but I've not seen it in Duo, for example. So there are going to be words that I'm not going to really say, in real life. I'm never going to say that I am, Mimi Nim China, I am Chinese. I'm not, so I'm not going to say it. But but knowing it for other countries, obviously, is pretty cool. It's because you can use it then for other people that you know from those countries, which is fine. When it comes to learning language generally in the beginning, I think it's good to focus on words that you are likely to say a lot and often. Now, in normal context, I would focus on things that are pertinent to me. So there are words that maybe other people wouldn't learn, but I would, because that's pertinent to me. When you're working with an app like Duolingo, the thing is you're taking up quite a lot of your study time learning words that you potentially don't need or are not relevant to your life. So you're prioritizing things that maybe in a natural setting you would learn later. So the word, for example, for, let me think, a broom or a bucket. We have the word for a bucket in the chores section. Ndo is a bucket, if I remember correctly. I personally wouldn't have learnt the word for bucket right now. I don't think I think it's a word that I've made now an effort to learn, and it's an extra word that could potentially confuse me in the future for a word that might be similar or remind me of something else that I do need. So when you learn too many words in the beginning that you don't necessarily need or you don't feel you will use, what it can do is actually have the opposite effect on your language learning and your language progress. Because what you can end up doing is spending a lot of time learning words that you're not going to use, that just kind of vaguely stay in your head, and then you get totally confused when you see them again, or when you try and learn something you actually do need. So as you can see, there are definitely at the moment pluses and minuses for me with how the course works in Duo. My overall opinion at the moment is that it's been a force for good in terms of it's given me some things to do with Swahili. I recently also discovered the language course on Swahili Pod 101. So I will start looking at that potentially as well, just to hear it in the background and listen to it. The thing with Swahili Pod that I've noticed straight away is that it is Kenyan focused. So I don't know if that's going to make a difference to the kinds of vocabulary and the kinds of greetings and different things. The first one that I looked at when I first found the site, it did look like they had some slightly different things than I've been learning with Glory, who is Tanzanian, and also even on Duo. So I don't know who wrote Duo exactly, but the things that I see on Duo, I do come across with Glory pretty much too. Okay, I'm seeing a nice Azerbaijani flag there. So selamlar, nice to see you from Azerbaijan. Okay, so this is where I am with my Duolingo experience so far with Swahili. I'm finding that yes, I can say certain things in Swahili. I can make some basic sentences. I can say some basic things, you know, and that's good. So I can say some basic things about myself, but none of this is anywhere near having a full conversation yet. There's kind of it's very much the beginning stages. It's only been 10 days. So let's not have crazy expectations of what I can do 10 days. It's a very different language. It works in a different way to the ones I already speak or speak well, and so. Exactly, I love it. Hakuna Matata. Now, the cool thing about Hakuna Matata, Daniel, is that I now understand the grammar behind Hakuna Matata. Okay, so that I like. I like that about it. Hakuna Matata. And we've been through, and if you watch actually just the first 3 videos of me learning, when I put the third one up today, you'll see that the ha is no, is the negative. And so there's basically there is no problem. Hakuna Matata. No worries. I'm not sure what matata is exactly, whether it's problems or worries, but I know the hakuna, the grammar behind it makes sense to me now, which is cool. And also things like, you know, you see these si jambo, ham jambo, hatu jambo. all these things that you see that you may have heard about in Swahili now are starting to make sense. I'm also seeing a lot of words that are connected to other languages I speak. So in the first lesson we had habari. Habari is news in Swahili, but they use it as a way to greet people. So habari is a safari. So news about the journey, news about travel, and in other words, like how have things been going, and you just answer like good or bad, whatever you want to say. Nzuri is good. So you can say things like that quite quickly and start to get words that have come in from other languages. Doing the numbers today, I've seen a lot of Arabic in the numbers. Days of the week, same. Months of the year. Yeah, there are, I mean, because they use numbers as well for all of those, which is pretty cool. And there are also a number of words that you just come across in Swahili that are you would hear in other languages from the Middle East, or words similar to them. They may just have a Swahili kick to them to just sort of change things up a bit. So asubuhi is the word for morning, and of course, so habari za asubuhi is like to say good morning, and sabah al khair, sabah al nur for good morning in Arabic. So it's funny how you start seeing these things. And sabah is also Turkish for morning. So you see words coming through quite a lot from different areas, and I really enjoy that. I find that quite fun. It's one of the things I love about language learning, is seeing these connections. So there we go. So that's my update for Swahili and Duolingo, and I hope that you found that useful. Any questions, let me know. I'm going to look at the questions I have already. I can see a few on both Instagram and YouTube, so I'm going to see what I can do. Why do you think Finnish and Estonian are similar? Because they're related, they're sister languages. So they belong to the same language family group. So yeah, they're both Finnic languages and Finno languages, so they belong to the same group. There are other languages in that group too, but they're probably the most well-known that are close together. Hungarian is put in the same family group, but the mutual intelligibility is pretty much zero unless you study the grammar. People say that if you speak Finnish or Estonian and you learn Hungarian or vice versa, then you have an easier time in processing the grammar. But the vocabulary is completely different. I think there are only a handful of words that are in common, whereas Finnish and Estonian, there are a lot of words that are in common or have a similar meaning, so you can pick them up quite quickly. Some of them have funny alternative meanings, but that happens in all these languages where you have families where they've taken an opposite meaning or a very different meaning. Do you speak with native speakers from day one, or do you or do the basics before you look at oral practice? So with Swahili, I did 3 days on my own, studying on my own, before I had my first lesson with Glory. Usually I will do a week or so on my own, just because it makes sense to sort of, first of all, to see what I can pick up so that it's not completely new and I don't spend the first few lessons doing things that I could have just done on my own. I actually prefer to practice the words that I'm starting to learn. So it would be being able to use them, remember things, see connections. And if you don't do any of that, then of course, yeah, it's going to be a slower process with the teacher in the beginning. And I think also there's a psychological thing as well with the teacher. When you do something on your own and you come to it, especially if it's a language where it's quite different and it's not one that, say, people tend to know something about or it's unrelated. If you go to the teacher and you already have some background because you've done a little bit on your own, I think also the teacher then automatically sort of sees you a little bit differently. Like they maybe don't go as slowly with you. They maybe help you to sort of progress a little bit more quickly. I mean, I could be wrong, but that's kind of been my feeling of doing that kind of thing. Yeah. I can see some more questions in here. Let me see. I see some questions about the chats, and yes, they're going ahead. So I'm having these interviews with people who want to study with me next year, and I've actually really enjoyed doing that. So I don't know how many people I'll be able to offer to study with, but you know, I enjoy doing it. I enjoy the process, and it's been great talking to people. And I'll try and find situations, sort of a way to be able to help as many people as I can. So yeah, it's I'll look forward to the chats and continuing them as well. Butcher from Michigan, because it's near. Hey, from Michigan, nice to see you, Irene. Do you think Swahili is easy? Easy is relative. So, look, I mean, in a week, I can say simple things. So I'm nowhere near anywhere where you would even, not even to A1. I mean, what I've done in a week is maybe I've covered a couple of hundred words, maybe. So it's a bit early to say it's easy or hard. I'm finding it enjoyable. I love Glory's attitude. I love her positivity and her belief that I'm doing it and getting there and learning things, and the positive feedback she gives me. I have actually, even in spite of some of the things that you may have understood from what I said about Duolingo, I've actually enjoyed doing the course on it. It's not perfect, but it's not been as bad as I thought it would be. Which, I know it sounds terrible to say that, but it's not been as bad as I thought it would be. So actually, I have enjoyed it. Easy is definitely relative. I do think that sometimes when you go through a course like Duolingo, it can give you a false sense of hope. It's because you get these kind of yay, you know, sort of you got 100%, and it's like you think you've covered everything because you've just done present tense, but you've only done present tense for a certain number of verbs, right? I mean, you then need to practice it, and you need to be able to understand how that that pattern will play out on different verbs and for different people and in different tenses. So it does take time. I mean, there's no way around it. I mean, people always say about Spanish being an easy language. And when I think of the amount of conjugations in Spanish, it takes time to get them right, and to get, you know, all of the tenses right, to get all of the individual conjugations right, and then also the moods. So the subjunctive mood, for example, and conditional, and those kinds of things. It takes time to get those things right, and then complex forms as well. There's a lot that goes into it. I think that a language is often easy if you want to learn it and you're highly motivated and you expose yourself to it a lot, and it becomes easy in that you just do it without even thinking about it. That's just a thing you do, and that's when a language, I think, gets easier. I know it sounds a bit of a cop out, and then you get to a language like Georgian, and unless you speak Svan or Laz or something, it's like, what? But yeah, I mean, generally speaking, I think that's what makes it easier. But I'm gonna the jury's out a little bit on Swahili still. I can see certain things that I can do in Swahili that, for example, I wouldn't be able to do in other languages. Like, for example, you know, putting two verbs together, but I can see that there are going to be other complications on the way. So that's why the jury's still out, because some of the things that Glory says to me about noun classes and about how you change some of the verbs as well. So one of the things we learned today was if you add na to a verb, it makes it like each other reciprocal. For example, a typical verb that I've been learning so far starts with ku in the infinitive, ku. So, for example, kupika is the verb to eat. Okay. Sorry, the verb to eat. Not the verb to eat. The verb to cook. Kupika. Kupika is the verb to cook. And pishi is the verb which you can a noun from that I've learned through Duo, but not in my classes, which means a cook. So it was quite easy to get it. And kupika, if you add na to it, it means to eat each other, which, I mean, you're not going to particularly want to say, but then you have, and this is what glory told means. If you want to sort of say to cook each other would be kupikana, would be to cook each other. But if you want to say to cook for each other, then you would need to say kupiki nana, I think. Kupiki nana, to cook for each other. And so you can see that just that one example, it's not going to be as straightforward as maybe it seems in the beginning, and I'm open to it being a bit more challenging later. So yeah, it's all the jury's definitely out at the moment. At the moment, I've really enjoyed it though. It's been a lot of fun, and I think a lot of that's down to having a nice teacher. Okay. Lydia Machova has been studying Swahili for a while now, right? Yes, yeah, she was really big into Swahili. I've not spoken to her for a bit. So obviously there has been no conferences in person, and so I've not seen her. Normally I see her in person when I go to a conference, and I've not seen her to chat. And she was really big into it. She really liked it as well. So I maybe need to swap notes with her and see what she thinks. And maybe after I've done this, I'll reach out to her and say, I've done this. Judith Maya also studied Swahili. So there have been a few people actually in the language community who have studied Swahili. It's a nice look at the language. I mean, look, I'm under no illusion that I will be able to speak Swahili after a month. It's just not very much time, and I will know a certain number of words and be familiar with how the language generally works, maybe at a basic level, but that's about as far as it will go. It will be a study of Swahili to a certain level, right? How many lessons with a teacher do you need before you become fluent? In my opinion, around 120 lessons, one-to-one with a teacher. JR, good question. So depending on what we mean by fluent, that's a really relative thing. So in the CEFR category, so we're talking about A1, A2, B1, B2. For A1, it was, for Turkish, it was 72 contact hours with my teacher to get to A1. And then on top of the hours with my teacher, it was 20 hours a week. Over a 3-month period, I did an intensive course for A1 and A2 Turkish. So that gives you an idea of sort of time frames to get to A1 and then to A2. So, I mean, you're talking, around 16 hours, was it 12 hours a week for 3 months, and then the study on top of that as well to learn and practice. So yeah, it's quite a lot for 3 months to get to A1, and then A2 is a similar amount of time, and then B1 is basically A1 plus A2 is B1 in terms of time frames. So whatever you've done for A1, double it to get to the end of B1, and then double it for the end of B2. So if B2 is your measuring stick for fluent, because that's what many universities accept for you to study through the language, which is a fair generic level that I think many people can agree. Okay, you might not feel very fluent and you might not reproduce the language in a very fluent manner, but generally speaking, if you've done B2, you should be pretty proficient in the language, to my mind. And then for that level, you're talking a good few years of study, if any language. And some languages will be easier to attain and to master than others because they've got shared vocabulary or whatever. So it will depend on that as well. But yeah, it's a difficult thing to pin down. It depends which languages you're already speaking. It depends how often and how into it you are. If you're not very into it, then it's going to take even longer. But if you're really, really into it and you're watching like tons of Netflix series or something on it, it's going to really help. Thanks for considering folks for tutoring. I didn't reply as your inbox must be full and await further emails. Thank you. Okay, I mean, at the moment, I mean, it's been quite busy. So I've had quite a lot of people reach out about studying with me. And I mean, as I've said before, I mean, this isn't a product that I'm necessarily selling. It's an opportunity to work with me and to. I've just enjoyed watching people succeed in language learning, and wanted to do that with a couple more people. I've been doing it for this year with a few people, and really enjoyed seeing them do well and improving. And if I can do that for more people, I'm very, very happy. Language learning, I mean, I'll continue doing the lives, so I'll answer questions here, and I may actually add to the things that I will offer, just to answer very specific questions for individuals. I think language learning is quite an individual process, and sometimes you need that individual contact to sort of answer very specific questions in terms that mean something to you. So yeah, I'll continue to do it. So look out for that, and I'll make some decisions by the end of the year. Of course, I mean, I work in other things, right? This isn't something I usually work in. So I actually use my languages in my projects that I do, which are not courses, and not language teaching, and not not this kind of, writing things for people to learn languages. And I started talking about language learning with these weekly question answer sessions, and then as I say, I took on some as favors to family and friends, some people to tutor, or to mentor, or to coach, or however you want to look at it. And it's been really, really nice. I've really enjoyed it. So yeah, it's nice to see results, and it's nice to see people improve. That makes me happy. So yeah. Hi Richard, great to see you learning a more uncommon language. Also love how Glory teaches. Yeah, Lucas, she's lovely. She really is. She's so positive. Yeah, I can't say enough really about how much I like working with Glory. She's really great. And yeah, I wanted to do an African language just simply because one of my kind of things that I find difficult year on year with working on the Polyglot Conference is getting African language representation, and it's something that I work very hard behind the scenes to try and motivate and encourage people to come and talk about African languages. It's the continent that is possibly least represented, usually, and it's got an amazing wealth and beauty, and very capable individuals who can talk about it. And I would love to encourage more people to sort of check out the gems that are scattered around Africa as a continent. It's just an incredible place, and my experiences with people from African countries have actually been extremely positive. So yeah, I wanted to share some of that, and hopefully that will encourage more people to do it, and to consider the languages and the people and the countries for visiting when it's possible, and also for more Africans as well to come out and see that we care, and we want to hear more about the languages. It's no one language is inherently worth more than another, and I do think that sometimes my perception is that there is a thought that learning certain languages are sort of more useful, or something else. Well, I mean, okay, if you look at the job market, you can make decisions based on that. I'm not going to patronize anyone. If you look at job boards and you see that there are certain languages that are more highly sought after, of course, if you look in economic terms, but in terms of nourishing the soul, they're all very much of a muchness, in terms of they're all very equal in that respect. I mean, you can get just as much learning one language as to another. It's the people you interact with, it's the experiences you have using the language, and it's the feeling of there's quite a privilege, I think, to learning a language that is not as commonly studied, and that is the feeling of belonging to groups, and to having a privileged view and seat at a table that not many people get to sit at, and there's something quite special about that. So So yeah, I'm glad you approve of me learning Swahili. Swahili is probably actually one of the languages that's more widely studied. So, I mean, there are other languages that I've looked at in Africa that I would definitely love to tackle one day. One of them is Botswana, because I adore Botswana. It's one of my favorite countries on the planet. The people are just incredibly nice. I enjoy the food. I enjoy just yeah, it's just a beautiful place, and the people are lovely. They've yeah, they're amazing. It's an amazing country. So yeah, who knows? Hopefully, this will lead to other things as well in the future for me, and for traveling. I'd love to get back to Botswana and to see more of the country. What's your opinion on Duolingo Stories? Not Duolingo, Tree. They have them in Spanish, French, Portuguese, Italian, German, and Japanese. I've not used them yet, JR, so I can't say. I don't want to answer a question I can't answer. One thing I did do, and I swore in the beginning that I was not going to do, is I did buy the premium for the month. And the reason I did it is because it was wasting so much of my time watching all of the adverts, and my time unfortunately isn't as free as it once was, or I would potentially like it to be able to have that luxury. So I thought it was worth taking out a month for Duolingo to do that. But the stories, like you say, they're not in the languages that I'm studying right now, but I will have a look. A few people have mentioned them to me, so I'll have to see if I can check them out. What do you think of them? I loving Duolingo. Fantastic. Yeah, I think I mentioned last week that the positive thing with Duolingo is that it's popularized language learning, and I think anything that has that kind of impact on language learning, I think is a good thing. Whether it's exactly for you and what you want and how you think is a different question, or a different set of questions. The fact that it has done that and it's become a normal thing to have the Duolingo app, the language learning app on your phone, I think is quite incredible. So I do like that about it. And also I find that when people get into a language and you have that kind of access point that is commonly known, and sort of people will hear about it in places where you wouldn't expect. It can often feed into other language learning courses or applications, or even to our language learning community, and that is only good, because you're talking about bringing people into a circle of products and of learning materials and people, communities that will just help to feed, and we all enrich each other, right? So I think that's always positive. Let me see. A very interesting difference I've noticed in multiple languages is that you either say "I am cold" or "I have cold." Yes, absolutely. Yeah, and some have an "are," so the verb to be and the verb to have. Also, with age, you get this as well. I am or I have so many years. Yeah, you get this kind of thing where it is interesting. For Italian, okay, you're using for Italian, Portuguese, fantastic. Greetings from the beaches of Peru. Oh, it sounds very nice, Robert. Are you sort of taunting me now? It's freezing cold here. That sounds really nice. Enjoy the beaches of Peru. My advice for you learning German: where do you start? Regular study is an important thing. Knowing why you're doing it, studying regularly is the most important thing. If you don't do anything, you don't learn anything. Doing at least 2 or 3 hours of focused study a week, I think, is important, so that you notice a difference in over a period of time in your ability to use the language. You need to be in constant contact with it. So that's my generic language learning advice, and it's the same for German as it is for pretty much any language. French and Spanish verbs. or nothing compared to classical Greek. Irene, I'll have to believe you. I've never studied classical Greek. I love it though. You've just scared me off it now. I think normal Greek is like sort of modern Greek for me is already okay. So yeah, maybe classical Greek's not for me yet. Maybe I'll leave that for a bit later. What shows are you watching on Netflix right now? At the moment, I'm actually not watching anything on Netflix. And now I don't really have that much time at the moment to do it, so I've not been watching anything over the past few weeks. The last thing I did watch was I actually watched The Office, the United States version of The Office. It's a show from the UK, and I watched that over a long period of time because it's very long. The US version is a lot longer than the UK version. Just because people always talked about and referenced it, and I wanted to get the memes a bit better, and also to see if it compared to the UK version. It was interesting. I tend to watch it with subtitles in Turkish, so there's always kind of a language element there for me. I think it takes the better part of a decade to really have enough experience and knowledge in most subjects to be able to talk in a foreign language about them, even one's mother tongue. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, it takes a long time. Lucas, you're right. It takes, when people ask me when can you say everything or when can you be fluent, it's almost like how long is a piece of string? Well, it's however long you cut it. And there are people who will speak one language, maybe even two languages or three languages or whatever, but then people who will speak one language and they will still find it challenging to talk on certain topics because they don't have the experience talking about certain things, using certain vocabulary or turns of phrase, or and look, that happens. It really does. It happens. So yeah, if you're not aware of the topic, of course, it doesn't even matter which language you're talking about, whether it's one that you've learned and got a C2 exam in, or whether it's your first language, or whether it's the only language you speak. If you don't know the topic, you don't know the topic, so you're not going to be able to talk about it anyway, or not very eloquently. And then you might get somebody who's got maybe a B2 level, but they're an expert in that topic, and they can talk for hours on it. It's all very, 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 very very relative. Glad you made my life. I'm glad you made my life too, Kate. Thank you. You think Duolingo stories are much more fun, JR? Okay. They are not just random sentences with no story like the Duolingo tree. Yeah, that's good to hear, actually. That's quite encouraging to know that. I'm seeing some good Duolingo fans here. That's nice, actually. It's nice that there are real advocates. I think because if you get behind Duolingo, it's and people see it as something that they can access, it makes language learning feel a bit more more doable, more attainable, which I think is always good. I'm glad that I'm seeing some agreements there about the gateway to learning other things and getting into more courses and stuff, which is great. Okay, I used Duolingo to start learning Russian, my first foreign language, but I felt that it was inefficient to learn the grammar implicitly, so only really use it for building vocab now. Yeah, I can imagine actually learning Russian on it would be challenging. I think sometimes the case systems in some of the Slavic languages can be quite involved, so it might make it a little bit challenging to really pick up on what's going on. You need to see an awful lot to get the patterns. This is the thing. With Slavic languages, I always say you need to see patterns, and the patterns take a while to get through. Okay. Do you believe that non-memorization is efficient? Non-memorization. So trying not to remember it, is that what you mean? Yes and no. So, for example, the way that's done on the Michel Thomas courses, where they say just let it go sink in. The method basically is you don't write things down and you don't make a huge effort. You don't worry about what you remember. But because they tell you a story and they backchain and they give you ways to retain the information in a story form, you automatically remember a lot more easily. So they basically do the job for you of making up stories. If you don't do that at all and you just read something and it's very, very different in terms of language, and you don't make any effort at all, particularly for certain very specific vocabulary, it can, especially vocabulary you're not going to see very often, just hoping that it's going to come up enough is going to be tough if you need it, right? So I don't know, if you love a certain topic, for example, or you have a certain thing in your life that you want to talk about, but that vocabulary doesn't come up very often, then unless you're reading things on that topic, which I would definitely encourage you to do, you may need to employ some sort of memory aids or techniques to be able to, at least when you're in a conversation, be able to go back, find a word, use it, and then what you'll find is when you start doing that a few times, making that connection to the word becomes quicker and quicker. It gets really quick, and then you almost forget the memory aid that was involved in putting it in your head. So this is where, for example, that there can be some strength in memory techniques. Memory techniques generally, yet for lists of words and things, there was a guy who famously won at Scrabble in France and didn't speak French, but he learned the Scrabble dictionary in French and didn't speak the language. So memorization on its own is not necessarily the be all and end all, because you need to be able to manipulate language and use it. Language is a living thing, right? It's not something you just recite like a poem or a story or something that you just sort of see. If you ever go to some museums, particularly in some certain countries around the world, I've been to a museum where you can see their eyes moving as they're talking about what they're describing to you in the museum. It's almost like they're reading everything because you can see their eyes moving, and it's not because they don't know the details. They can even go back, but they've memorized it in a rote fashion, and you can, to a degree, do that. It's not the most effective way of learning a language. It needs a bit more feel to it. For me personally, I definitely wouldn't be able to do that in the same way as some people maybe. So yeah, it can be handy to memorize things in a way, in a more deliberate way, but I don't think it's the be all and end all. You have, okay. What do you think is an achievable and worthy milestone for learners of any language? Anything's worthy, pretty much. If you know nothing of a language and your goal is to go on holiday and you just want to be able to greet people and thank people and order basic stuff or ask for things, say nice things, I think it's a worthy goal. Look, it's definitely a nicer impression that you leave on the people from the place when you go home. You leave a better impression of you and possibly other people from where you're from. They might have more positive reactions to other people as a result of that, and positivity kind of breeds positivity, right? So even that for me is positive. So I remember we had Cornish Week, and in Cornish Week they picked a word or phrase. Miraz. Miraz is thank you in Cornish, and basically the idea was to just give people something they could use in Cornwall or wherever they want, whether they speak somebody who speaks Cornish, in a shop, to kind of reintroduce the idea of a more normal, more normalcy to speaking, more normality to speaking Cornish, even if it's just a little phrase, like to go into a shop and say "Dydd da," good day or hello, and then "Miraz" when you leave, to say thank you, because if you want to either reintroduce a language or normalize language or just have a kind of a nice reaction, I think it's it's always good, even if it's like small things that you want to learn, right? I think it's worthwhile to do that. But then other milestones could really vary. I mean, I've met people who want just to be able to say very basic things like order food, maybe introduce themselves, have a bit of basic conversation with somebody. And I've met people who want to learn to speak almost like a monolingual native speaker of a language, which is a huge goal and probably a lifelong journey. So I don't necessarily think that one is worse than the other. I think they're just different, and they've definitely got different workloads involved. I think learning a bit of any language is always good, which is why I kind of don't see this whole, and I've spoken about this before, I don't see this dichotomy that some people perceive between you either learn a language to like C2, you're fluent and you're really good and you're reading like, I don't know, Proust in whichever language, or I don't know, or the equivalent of Proust in whichever language. And for me, there's no dichotomy there. It's, you can do that with one language or two languages or however many you want, that's possible in your lifetime. But it doesn't negate the need or the desire or the value in learning bits of other languages. The two things can live in a symbiotic way. I mean, you can have the two things together, and it doesn't make one less worthy than the other. It's just different, and so yeah, I mean, I would applaud anyone who wants to. Any type of learning is worthy of, praise and admiration. I think when you want to learn something, you're showing that you want to grow. And so I'm a big fan of anyone who wants to learn anything. And I'm talking about proper learning, right? Not sort of, 5 minutes on Google isn't learning. 5 minutes on Google is the start of finding where sources are. So, 5 minutes on Duolingo isn't learning. In fact, it's the start of a process. And whether that process stops at hello, thank you, goodbye, or whether that process goes on to talk about a whole range of topics, that's for you to decide. And I would say that both are absolutely fine. Können wir alle miteinander reden in der Online-Polyglot-Konferenz Ende März? Ja. Was wird da gemacht? Okay. Lohnt es sich? Ja, natürlich. Wir werden ganz wahrscheinlich was organisieren. Ich meine, ich habe schon vor, was jetzt auch nächstes Jahr zu organisieren. Jetzt im Moment ist im März und auch noch, also ein paar Mal werde ich schon was organisieren. Also es lohnt sich schon. So, du kannst ja eigentlich, wenn du willst, du kannst ja drauf auf den Knopf registrieren drücken und schauen, und ja, dann wird schon was los. Ne? Es gibt noch Leute, die da sich treffen, und die sprechen ja auf mehreren Sprachen, und ja, das kannst du auch so mitmachen. Und, ja, aber es lohnt sich schon, ja. Do you like the Office UK or the Office US better? UK for sure. The UK office is just, yeah, I mean, it's just, yeah, I mean, it's the original, and the only thing is it's not that long, but it's very layered and very funny. The US office is not as layered. It's layered to a degree, and there are some references that I needed to have explained for sure, because not everything from the US is as simple as people sometimes like to pretend. There is some intelligent writing there, and some good dialogues. It's very cringy, like the UK one, but yeah, I enjoyed watching the US one actually a lot more than I thought I would, because people had been quite critical of it in the UK. So I was nowhere near as good. It's just different. It's different, but it was good. I enjoyed it. I've been studying Japanese every day for a month, but I had to stop to focus on Korean and my classes. Now forgotten most of what I studied, even basic reading of kanji. Yeah, that happens, Kate. With languages, when we stop and then we go back, what you'll find possibly if you go back to Japanese and you start studying things again, it will start to come back to a degree. But that happens to me too. It's very normal. I think it's the important thing is just knowing that it's normal and fine, and if you want to pick it up later, it's there. Japanese isn't running anywhere, so focus on your Korean and your studies, and you can always come back to it. Okay, Duolingo is the only app of which people complain about not becoming fluent from it. It's only one resource. Exactly. So Martin, yeah, I mean, you can't just do Duolingo and expect that from Duolingo you're going to be fluent in a language. I mean, by almost any measure of like what fluency is, you simply don't have the number of words, as far as I can see so far, to be able to manipulate language in the right way. You'd need other sources of information, and you would need to practice, and you need to do things. So me doing it and then working with Glory helps, because I see certain other words or have things explained. I get to use them in a very proactive way. But yeah, I agree. It gets criticism for that. I don't think it's a fair criticism. I think there are other criticisms of it that are fairer. Like, for example, pretending that you're fluent after it, or thinking that you might be fluent after it, because you've been trained to think it. Maybe, I don't know. I that's kind of the impression I've got, that people expect that they will get to the end of it and not be, and then they're disappointed. And there is something to blame there in kind of the cult of Duolingo. I think there is some blame there, but it doesn't inherently, from what I've seen so far, tell me that I'm going to be fluent or amazing in Swahili. I mean, there's only 3 levels in Swahili. It's not as big as some of the other courses. Страхотен си, Richard. Благодаря. Even reading basic kanji, what can you suggest I do to continue my Japanese study? It's a lot. Depends if you have time to do it, because Kate, what you were writing before made me think that you don't have time. If you're having to focus on Korean, and then it could be that you don't have time. It could also be that they interfere with each other, because there are similarities between the 2 languages. In terms of the way you form structures and things, there are some similarities there. So I would say it depends on you. It's a very individual question. It depends on what your goal is. Why are you doing Korean now? Why are you doing Japanese now? And what are your goals with both? So that would be my question back to you. Sorry not to give you a direct answer, but I don't want to fob you off with nonsense. I'd rather it be a proper answer. I also love how the levels in Duolingo, like, you can go from level 1 to 25, so it's like a video game almost. Yeah, it is. It's a bit like a video game. I get why it's interesting. Absolutely. I am more of the English Proto-Roman languages, other than, I think, remains complicated thing. Oh wow, okay. I don't get what you mean. I'm trying to make sense of that. You just yoded me on this live. Okay. and now won't work for a number of hours. I've never tried to memorize something on purpose in languages. I like it flies by. Yeah. Automatisch, as you say. Ja, okay. Ja, es haftet automatisch. Ja, genau. Also, da kannst du, du nimmst eigentlich so ein Ticket, und dann, du kriegst ein Ticket und du hast ja alles drauf geschrieben, was du eigentlich tun musst. Und dann kannst du einfach da reinschauen und gucken. Es gibt ja mehrere Stunden für viele Sprachen, die du eigentlich üben kannst. Und du kannst auch was noch dazu geben, wenn du willst. Zum Beispiel, wenn du eine bestimmte Sprache üben möchtest und das nicht da ist, dann kannst du sagen, okay, das will ich gern machen. Dann kannst du einfach, es gibt Also du kannst es einfach drauf schreiben. Es gibt ja einen Link drauf und du kannst da drauf drücken und schreiben, was du gerne machen möchtest und dann auch eine E-Mail schreiben, damit ich die Information sehen kann. Also im Moment gucke ich das alles nicht so tagtäglich an, weil wir jetzt im Moment keine Konferenz haben, aber das werde ich schon machen, wenn ich eine E-Mail bekomme. Do you think that Michel Thomas is bad because you have a non-native speaker like Michel Thomas teaching you the language? Okay, so Michel Thomas taught the original languages. The other courses have a speaker from the country who's potentially grown up speaking or is a teacher of the language in the country. Native speaker, so to say, first language speaker, first language level speaker, whatever the correct term is. I think probably first language level speaker is probably the best thing for me to use. But yes, you do have that in the later courses. So the ones I've heard, Japanese, Korean, Greek, Arabic, they definitely have it. The original ones are sort of French and German, whatever, and Michel Thomas. And yes, he does have an accent. Does it impede my comprehension of his reproduction of the language? No. So I'm not a big accent snob. I actually don't really mind if somebody has an accent. It's, for me, not the end of the world. It can be quite charming and endearing. But yeah, it depends on what your personal thoughts are on that. I mean, it's a very personal thing. But yeah, they're not all with non-native speakers teaching you, if that helps. Okay, let's see. I've got a couple more questions and I must finish, unfortunately, tonight. I have a number of other things that I have to do this evening. But I think someone... Oh, Joanna, it's nice to see you. I think someone may have mentioned this, but the title mentions you are using Duolingo, which is probably Duolingo's little cousin. Yeah, I'll correct that on the way out. Yeah, I wrote it very quickly when I was setting it up, so I could have put in a P instead of no. Look, these things happen, so I'll change that. Thank you for pointing it out, though, because it means that I'll change it before it goes live on the site as a video. How many languages do you study simultaneously? I'm constantly looking at different languages, and so there's not a specific number that I will do all of the time. At the moment, I'm looking at Celtic languages, and I've been doing Korean sort of as a steady, very slow-paced study of Korean. So what would that be? I've been looking at Cornish consistently, and then Gaelic, and then been doing some Irish, which is quite closely related to Gaelic, and then Korean. And then I've dabbled in other things. I mean, I like to dabble. I like to play with other things. So I've done bits of Maori, bits of other things as well to sort of get back, but not. I mean, it's sort of what I've done consistently. Like for now, I'm actually preparing for my second Cornish exam, which will be next year. I will do the exam for level 2 of Cornish, and my goal is to continue doing Cornish and to complete all 4 levels at the moment. I never thought I'd say that at this time. It was one of my goals for my retirement languages was to go back to the Celtic languages because, but with COVID happening, I decided that there was an opportunity to study some of them online in a way that I wouldn't be able to normally. And I don't know if that will go away after COVID. I don't know, but other languages that I could study are going to always be available with teachers or whatever else online, whereas Celtic languages, and I don't know all of them necessarily will be. My one slight regret is that Manx hasn't gone online as much. I think probably because the Isle of Man is an island that hasn't been as affected by COVID. So maybe that's why. But I would have potentially done Manx because it's part of sort of
the region of the UK where I'm from. So even though the Isle of Man is not part of the United Kingdom, it was an island that came on the weather map when on TV for me, and we always talked about the Isle of Man, and we went on school trips to the Isle of Man, and so the Isle of Man has always been something that's kind of been a constant thing that I've been exposed to as a thing that's in our region, and so I've kind of felt this closeness. I don't know if I have any Manx family, possibly somewhere in the background, maybe, who knows, but no, generally not. But that's what I've been doing. Let me see. As for Duolingo, it's never done much for me. I need more thorough grammar materials to push me to the next level. Yeah, Joanna, it's interesting to go through it actually, because my perceptions have been, and from feedback I've got, that it's very different for each language, in fact. So, what you can do with Swahili and what you can do with other languages is probably going to differ quite a lot. Wo hast du dein Au-pair in Deutschland gemacht, Richard? Also das war in Nordrhein-Westfalen, also in der Nähe von Venlo in Holland, also da. Ja, auf jeden Fall. Okay, okay, dann vielen Dank. Mach mal, und dann sehen wir uns hoffentlich bald wieder so da auf Polyglot Conference. Ja, das wäre gut. Richard, understand Italian, French, Spanish, speaking English now. Wow, great, have a word. Yeah, and other languages. Yeah, I do like languages. My degree, I mean, so if you don't know, my university degree is in French, Spanish, Italian, and Portuguese. So that's what I studied and have a degree in from university. And then I also have an advanced diploma in Czech studies, and I sat in on 2 years of the Scandinavian studies degree. So I did Swedish and Old Icelandic, and then I've also studied at universities in Sweden through Swedish. So yeah, this is kind of where I use them. And then obviously I have my home languages as well, which are different. Again, some of them are the same. Is there anything wrong with anglicizing Greek sentences? You mean writing it with sort of Latin letters instead of using the Greek letters? Greek letters are actually super, super easy to learn. The alphabet's really straightforward. Spelling in Greek is a bit more complicated because you have a number of ways to write the same sound in Greek that makes spelling a bit difficult, especially for Greek people. But I would say that it's not really necessary for a language like Greek. I mean, it won't take you that long to get used to it. It really won't. And a number of the letters are the same as Latin letters. It's really not that big of a deal to learn. And if you start writing the sort of Latin letters to reproduce the Greek sounds and words, you may get stuck on the Latin pronunciation, like the r sounds, these sorts of sounds that we don't have in English, or in some other languages. Yeah, it's like a y. It's not as far back as a r, sorry. It's a y. So it's like, I don't know, yinika, like for a woman. And we have the word gynecologist in English, which is basically where the word comes from in English. It's from Greek for woman. So I would recommend learning Greek letters, absolutely. It's quite straightforward. It takes a bit of practice to get to read them in a pretty fluent manner, but it's doable. Can we follow you at Duolingo? Of course you can follow me, absolutely. Feel free. It's just my name, so you can hopefully find me quite easily. I have no idea how to do that. Yeah, let's follow you. You follow me, follow away. Absolutely, I'm very happy if you follow me. I wonder if Cornish is very common, a very corny goal to very good, Joanna. Or is it just party people, fasty people from the British Isles? So, yeah. No, Cornish is actually the language. The Cornish language community has been so welcoming. I really like it, and I've thoroughly enjoyed learning Cornish. I actually never imagined that I would get so into Cornish, which is crazy, but I really like it. Martin studied Irish for 10 years. Hardest thing is finding comprehensible content. It's getting better with Irish, I think. That's my feeling, is it's getting better. I'm using this site for Irish called Rangana, and it's they have 2 courses, 3 courses in fact. They have beginners, which is what I'm doing now, and I'm now at, where am I? Chapter 10, coming up to chapter 11 on that, on the beginner course. And then they have the intermediate course, and then they have an advanced course, and they have quite a lot of stuff in there. It's weird because when you look at some of the intermediate stuff, if you've done even what I've done in the beginner course, you can recognize some of the stuff. So I guess it's going to be comprehensible input in that. But yeah, that's been quite useful if you want to revise Irish. If you want to get back into it, Martin, let's say. I don't know how far you got with it, but they've got some cool things on there. Also, there are some of the RTE things that are out there. There's also slow news in Irish as well, that you can look at. If you're interested, just let me know, and I'll pop a link into the description here, and I'm happy to share that with you. 10 years to learn Russian. 10 years to learn Russian. Wow. Verbalizing. Most of us try to speak Russian, but don't have a yeah. It's time is the killer. Time is always the thing, right? Is it necessary to learn grammar? Grammar can. I mean, the thing is, I don't think one or the other, like with grammar. Some people find it handy to get an overview of a language and to see similarities, and if you do, and that you're that person, great, it works for you, great. And sometimes it can help you just figure things out more quickly. People think differently, so if you're not a grammar person, that's also fine. If you're reading a lot and listening a lot to the language, the patterns will emerge over time. It's this comprehensible input idea. They will emerge over time. It just, sometimes I find, and I mean, some linguists will kill me for this, but sometimes I do find that having a kind of a shortcut to the grammar and understanding why something is said in a very quick way can actually really just help shave off a little bit of time in the learning process, because as intellectual sentient human beings, we've been through the learning process before, so making a comparison can actually be a huge help, I think. Oh wow, okay. I would like you to come to Lankaran and meet the youth of Lankaran. Yes, that sounds very sweet. Thank you very much for that kind offer. I don't know where Lankaran is. Without any context, sorry, I'm not too sure where it is. But I'd love to hear more. I actually have spoken at a number of schools and events about language learning and answered questions in various languages, and I'm very happy to do that kind of thing. When travel is possible again, hopefully. Do you believe that rote memorization? Okay, I think I answered that question. Rote memorization is efficient. Yes. Yeah, to a degree. Again, I did answer that more fully earlier, I think. General adaptation. Okay. I'm doing my best to go through and make sure I haven't missed any questions. If you have any questions, do save them up. Feel free to write them as well in the comments, and I'll do my best to sort of tackle them either in a video or I will answer directly if I can easily. Some questions I get are very, very difficult to answer, like how do I learn a language? Teach me this, or how do you learn this language? Some of them are just very long answers, and I can't really do it very easily in a sort of a Q&A session or in a comment section. So some of those I can't answer, and I'm not ignoring you if I see those. It's just that I don't often have an answer that I would be very happy sharing, in that I wouldn't feel it was adequate. But yeah. I'm not happy, Richard. Yes. Okay, fantastic. Okay. Yeah, write to me if you want. I've actually spoken to students over Zoom before as well, in classrooms and had questions and stuff, and it's nice. It's nice to interact with people. I enjoy that. That's one of the reasons why I learn languages. Have you learned any languages at the same time before? Yeah, absolutely. So at university and also privately, I've learned a number of languages at the same time. So yeah, I'm very happy for you to. Yeah, I think it works. You can learn languages at the same time. You just have to keep an eye on whether or not it works for you. It's a personal thing. Okay, I think I should end now because I've got to 1 hour 20 minutes, and I think that it's a bit crazy. I fully agree. Okay, Yuta, nice to see you, Yuta, by the way. I fully agree that comprehensible input is the best. I try to consolidate what I seem to understand in an intuitive way with grammar, currently learning Korean. Yeah, I'm glad you agree with that, actually, Yuta. It is, I think, to my mind, I don't agree with this polarization of certain topics. I think that sometimes it can be throwing the baby out with the bathwater, and I think that it's an individual thing, and yeah, trying things and seeing what makes sense is the really important thing. So what works for me does not necessarily work for you, and this is why anyone who's applied to work with me to study a language, we have a talk because I want to make sure that I can actually do what they need, because I might not be able to do what they need. I might be completely the wrong person to help, and I'd rather they didn't waste time with me. I'd rather they went forward and found somebody else that could. So I'm trying to be very mindful in my answers and to make sure that it's in my interest to see someone succeed and to see you succeed. And if any of these lives help in any way, then I really hope that you will like and subscribe and share, and some other people can see it and hopefully find answers to questions and explanations that they hadn't thought of before. Anyway, I should go. It's coming up for 1 hour and 22 minutes, or 23 minutes, but it's been so nice to spend time with you again. Next week I probably won't be around, just because next Sunday is it's kind of a holiday next weekend for me, and then the week after I may or may not be around. I don't know yet, but I will let you know if I am able to be. But I will take a week off over the holidays. My daughter's not at school, and so I want to spend time with the family as much as I can. So I will be off next Sunday, and I hope you all have a lovely week and enjoy the holidays if you celebrate holidays at this time. And I look forward to reconnecting with you next week. Next week, the week after next, or the week after that, but in 2022 probably. I look forward to reconnecting with you then, and thank you so much. And speak to you all soon. And of course, we're in touch in the meantime. I will not be offline, so I will be around in some way or another. Take care. Bye, everyone.